Everybody, let's open the meeting with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 5th of 2003. Welcome to the 7 p.m. Thursday night Treasure Map meeting of the Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, but spouses are welcome to attend the meeting with the alcoholic. We'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors who are here from out of town. Please stand and introduce yourself. Anybody here from out of town tonight? No. Also, we would like to welcome anybody who is visiting the Treasure Map meeting for the first time. Please stand and be recognized. Anybody here for the first time? Welcome. And finally, we would like to welcome anyone who is at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're very happy you came tonight, and you are welcome here. Anybody here for their first meeting? All right, if this is your first meeting, we have a gift for you in the back at the welcoming table if you'd like to stop back there. The Treasure Map meeting group of Alcoholics Anonymous celebrates our sobriety birthdays on the last Thursday of each month. Treasure Map home group members celebrate each month of sobriety for the first 12 months and then each consecutive year thereafter. If you'd like to make the Treasure Map group your home group, please see Randy for details. And just a quick announcement on that, if you have a March birthday, please let me know so that we can get ready for that. The Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous is committed to bringing a message of hope to those who suffer from alcoholism. We believe this message is contained within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our personal experiences. AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Our meeting tonight will focus on step 4, and it will begin shortly. If you'd like a book, there's some in the back. And now I'd like to welcome Bill to read how it works.
Bill, alcoholic. Thank you for that. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these, we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Yes.
Now please welcome Amy to read our 12 traditions as we pass the baskets. Thank you in advance for your generosity and support. Tradition 7 states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy, I'm an alcoholic. These are our traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
All right, and now I'd like to introduce our 10-minute speaker, Craig.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Bossa. I'm an alcoholic. I was asked to share a little bit about my experience on the 4th step. And as I look back, I've had different experiences with the inventory process. First of all, I mean, from the very beginning, what was my first idea of what a 4-step could be? It first started out with my being in Brookings County Jail. As by the dim light of the Gen Pop cell, there sat a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous on the table. And the first time that I was in jail, I opened up that book, again, by the dim light. They never let the lights get very low. And I was reading, for whatever reason, I opened up the book to how it works. And as I'm going through, I'm reading, from the beginning, and I got to the steps. And when it got down to the fourth step, write that moral inventory, like, that ain't gonna happen. I'm not gonna do that. So 6 weeks later, when I was back in jail, I opened the book up again, and I was like, well, maybe there are some things I could write down, or I wasn't even considering writing it down. It just didn't scare me enough to stop at that point, reading on through that. But when I got to 8 and 9, the book closed again. So that was my first introduction to our literature of Alcoholics Anonymous, was in Brookings County Jail. So I know it's important that we have our literature in institutions. It was a start. It wasn't the start, it was a start. And then from that point on, I went on, kept on getting in trouble, kept on going back to jail, kept on trying to read the big book a little bit. But for the last time I was in jail, they agreed that I could leave jail to go to treatment. So, and within this treatment center, it was basically a 5-step treatment center. And I had to successfully complete their treatment program. And of course, in that, it was writing a 4-step. And, in my, 22nd day, whatever, they said, well, you need to be giving your 5th step. I'm going, that's going to be really difficult since I haven't started writing a 4-step. So on your 28-day period treatment center, mine turned into, being another week longer, because they reminded me about the successful part of completing this program. I was going back to jail if I didn't do it. So for some reason, I found the willingness to write something down, and it was not difficult, because there were the things that I was thinking about myself, about my past, some of my shames and some of my regrets that haunted me on a daily basis. These were the things that I wrote down. I am not in the practice of confession, so I had not ever done that, other than the stuff that I would say to you when I was drunk, or to the bartender, something like that. I would maybe give you a little kernel, trying to get your attention. Well, when it came down to give, I wrote that inventory the best that I could, and I gave the 5th step. And it was interesting. I followed the form that I was given at the time, and in our literature, it tells me that I write on resentments, fears, and sexual conduct. And it was, quite a while later, 20 years later, whatever, I was looking through some old papers, and I found some of my old treatment center stuff. And I was looking at the 4th step guide that they had handed me. Not one thing on resentments, not one thing on fears, and not one thing on sex. And I'm going, what are they trying to go after? And I'm really grateful that Wilson, in writing the book and looking at our stuff, looked at the 3 major tripping points that we have in recovery. We're all tied up with anger and holding grudges. That does not allow us to free up and be in today. In the same way with our fears, that frees us, so we don't make decisions, we don't take action. And also my sexual conduct, that which is selfish and up to that point quite shameful, because I was not a man of character. So when I look back, if I did that, I did the best that I could. Was it good enough? I stayed sober. It was a start. It was a inventory. It wasn't the inventory. I'm very grateful for a gentleman in the room that was listening to one of my 5th step, talking about him and I wrote inventory very similar, but just a little bit different. I was doing the left to right, set up and down lists, but that isn't. I'm starting to explain this is how my past sponsor had directed me to do it, and he not corrected me. He let me off the hook by saying it's a 4th step. It's a 5th step. It's not the 4th or 5th step. And that gave me license to relax, and also recognize that it didn't have to be, as long as I follow the guidelines in the book, I'm going to get the results that the book promises. So I'm in AA quite a long time. I'm active in Brookings. I'm sponsoring people, and it's going okay. I had, some sponsorship that, we dealt with a little bit of stuff, more piecemeal at a time than a big inventory after I was in treatment. But after a very long period of, I was actually, I think in my 20th or 21st year of sobriety, I got to meet a gentleman up in Aberdeen who, at that time, my sponsor was getting very ill, and it was my turn to be a caregiver for him rather than him trying to necessarily help me. But he was physically unable to keeping that message. He was just unable. And I got the gift of being able to be a caregiver to him. So that left me without a sponsor. So I'm back to sponsoring myself. And I was actually down at Southside, and I was visiting with Mike actually, and we were talking. He was talking about a sponsor, and he started describing him, and I'm going, I'm not familiar with this guy. I've been around for a while, and I've been at that time coming down to Southside on a very regular basis for many, many years. And then he told me that his sponsor was Keith L. at the time, and he explained that he was in Florida, I believe, at the time, or wherever, or Washington. And he told me what the background was, and I didn't know that was a possibility. I didn't realize that, because again, I'm looking around in AA, it's like, what do you have that I want? And it's that, it was that simple. Do I see the peace and the gifts of the program in your life? If I don't, I'm going to be looking elsewhere. And Mike and I had a good relationship. We started, comparing our lives. We had so many similar life things going on. So when he told me about his sponsor that was a little far away, I went out and I met this guy, and he spent some time with me. And then I was very fortunate to work with this gentleman. It was Scott R. out of California. And what he did with me was he didn't assume that I knew how to do the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. He brought me to the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We opened up the book. We started from the beginning. We got to the parts like, well, you're going to need to write an inventory. I go, I forgot to tell you that I have a learning disability. I don't write very well. I can't spell. If it's more than 3 letters, there's a good chance I'm going to misspell it. He goes, I don't care. You can. And this was back in 07 or whatever. He goes, I don't care if you speak into a tape recorder. You're going to do an inventory. All of a sudden, I had the ability to scratch something down. And he took me to the book. He took me to the book, and it was so beautiful because he didn't add anything to our literature. He asked me to do what was written. And I thought, well, you don't understand. I've been sober a long time. It should be a little more in depth, a little different angles than what our literature says. He goes, have you tried what the literature says? Well, you mean like how it's written down? I go, no. He goes, we're gonna open up the book. So I wrote out my grudge list, and as I was looking through my bag, I actually got one on an inventory here. Who am I torqued at in my last time? Is like my boss. My company. Why am I pissed at my company? For buying the company I wanted to work for. And, it goes on. And we talked about, then I wrote down, I figured out if it affected my self-esteem, if it affected my pocketbook, if it affected my ambitions, if it affected my personal relationships, including sex. And it would go on through and through and through. And in the way that he just had me do it, we would just at the end would have, check if it affected it, because in the 5th step, I would expound on how it affected my personal ambitions. I would expound on how it affected my self-esteem and go on. And what he had had me do on another piece of paper, along with the resentment, number one resentment, number 1 on the character defects, he would have me write a couple things out on that. One was, what character defect could God remove from me that I would no longer feel this resentment? Wow, that's a different way of looking at this. What could God remove from me that I wouldn't hold this grudge anymore? And the second one was, in the book it tells us that we're unwilling to accept spiritual sickness. It says the second question was, am I willing to accept that myself, another child of God, could be that is spiritually sick, or I'm not willing to accept it, or in the case it's somebody else, I would put their name in. I'm not willing to accept that Mike is another child of God and could be spiritually sick. Because in the book it tells me that the only one that I'm having judgment on is myself. The inventory is only my inventory. So we're looking at this from a different point of view. And so when I did that, what I realized was, we wrote down then we went on to the fears section, and we wrote down, I listed my fears and I listed why did I have them. And we went through that. The magic thing about listing fears are, a lot of them are not real. They have the magic of disappearing as it comes out of the pencil. Sometimes just the silliness of seeing it in print, let alone telling somebody about it, it made it go away. So, I did that. I did what the directions in the book on fears. And then we got over to the sex conduct part of the inventory. And that was something like at this point, I've been married for 20 years and, had a pretty short, I thought sex conduct issues. And what I really had found out was that it's not about sex at all. It's about being selfish. It's about answering the questions listed in the book. It's asking me questions like, am I selfish? Am I dishonest? Am I inconsiderate? Who did I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, anger, bitterness? Where were I at fault? What should I have done instead? Not what I could have done. What should I have done instead? It's all about building, and that flows into also the sexual ideal at the end. That's about, and he would have me write separately what I should have done instead, because this helps build the architecture of the kind of man I want to be, because this is what I did. This is where I want to go. And I looked, back at it. It's like I wrote down things like and again, 20 years into it, it's like it's just my wife, because all the other, pretty much everything else had been cleaned up in the past through the inventory process. I had to look at it and be honest. Like sometimes it feels like we're roommates with benefits. And that's not a thing that makes me feel good about myself. My lack of consideration at times showing real maturity. Looking at other women in a sexual way that allowed my mind to wander what it would be like. These are thoughts and actions that I don't want anymore. And we got on to the last page. We started talking about our sexual ideal. What should we have done instead? We got it all down on paper to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We started each relation to this test. Again, was it selfish or not? We asked God to help mold our ideals. And what I got to, through this process, I got to look at what kind of man I want to be, and how are we supposed to move in a direction if we don't have a goal? The book is full of prayers and considerations and asking for direction. And with this direction, at the time when I wrote this inventory, it says that I want my life to reflect the love and consideration that Jesus Christ has love for me. That I want to be a father, that my first thought is the care and protection of my family and my wants second. It's not the way I've been living. I want to be a sponsor that lives in a way that is desirable and to have a relationship with God in all things that are possible with His help. I want to be a man of character, a leader at work, that in my life, inside and outside, reflects the same values. I'm transparent. I am the same man at work as I am in an A meeting with my sponsees, with the people around me. What I found out was through this process, especially in this episode, and there's been many episodes of inventory processes, I had the ability and realized that I couldn't live this way anymore. It was the beginning, and I know this is 5 and 6, but it was the beginning. It was the beginning of a process, that the brokenness that I recognized that I can't live this way anymore, that I can't do this. There's a beautiful story in the back of the book. The man asks, I can't do this, God, please. Asking permission to give this stuff up. And that's what I saw when I went through all those resentments that I went through with Scott when I gave that inventory, was over again and again and again, the selfishness that I kept on exhibiting, even though I've been sober a long time, the embarrassment and the shame that was coming out, and realizing I can't do this. This is just self-willed, taken over completely. It may be dressed up in, he goes to a lot of meetings, he sponsors a lot of guys, but inside I needed to be different. I needed to be better, is not the right word. I need to be transformed even at 20 years sober. And the end result was my sobriety went from okay to living color. It added definition and color and presence that I never had before. And I wasn't necessarily doing AA wrong or bad before. All I know is I took the actions that were outlined in the book, and I got the results that's outlined in the book. I'm pretty sure 10 minutes is a short period of time to talk about this, but man, I challenge you, if you've been sober a while and you haven't taken the time to go through the inventory process, be honest enough to look. Be honest to say, let's be realistic. Every decision's based on self anyway. How much self? Let's try to get less self. What helps us? What heals us? Help and self-sacrifice of others doesn't sound like what I want. It's not getting what I want. What can I give to you? Heard the same exact message from the pulpit just a couple of weeks ago at home. It was talking about the same thing. It was all about service, love, and compassion. Do what I do. Not what I say, do what I do. Look at my feet. I follow and I look for men in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that are of character, that are not perfect, but they're of character. They're going in a direction. And they're not settled with patient improvement or gradual improvement. They're looking for true rise. And that means that takes effort. And that means writing inventory when you're sober 30 years. I'm grateful because, back since I did that back when I was 20 years sober, I was very fortunate. March 3rd, I was able to celebrate 32 years of continual sobriety, and that allowed me to say, yes, this process works no matter where you are at in recovery. Do I believe I would have the same result that I had 20 years sober in my first year? I don't know. I didn't take those actions in my first year. My hope is you take the actions written in the book. Ask your sponsor to share their experience in writing inventory, because if it's really vague and nondescript, we have the directions in the book. You don't have to be shortchanged. Not because, and believe me, do not hear it sounds like I'm against treatment centers. I don't know if I'd be sober today if I didn't have that institution to go to at the very beginning. It gave me 30-day jump start to a way of life that I never thought I could enjoy, let alone thrive in. Thank you.
Michael D. I'm from Sioux Falls, and I'm an alcoholic. And we're going to do our step study this week on the 4th step. And so when I think about the 4th step, and when I was planning this talk, I was thinking about, why should anyone ever do a 4th step? Right? Like in today's culture, like we always hear this stuff, right? Like, let go of the past, right? Don't judge yourself or anyone else, right? Find peace with your past, right? Maybe that's not bad advice. I think it's somewhat horrible advice. I think it's portional advice. May not be full and complete, but it's portional. And what, it's not going to work, is it? It's okay. I can just do this and we're good. Yeah, we're totally good.
All right, Mike.
It's not a problem. Thanks,
Sorry,
brother.
buddy.
That's all right. So when I think about that question, like, why would you do one? And really, unless I have a really good reason to do one, I don't know why anybody would. That's just the truth, Why drudge all that stuff up? Why relook at that, right? Why especially look for my part in it? I mean, if you're anything like me, you probably played a very, very small part in your life. And, why drudge all that up? And I think that's what's so crucial about steps 1, 2, and 3. Because if we misunderstand them, I really don't know why anybody would do a 4-step. That first step is so clear, I think, when I go through that book and I look at what the doctor's opinion says alcoholism is. This physical problem that I have, this allergy to alcohol that I have and that I'm going to have until they throw dirt on me. This body is not going to be healed from the allergy. I got it. The other thing that I got is this mind that lies to me. It tells me stories about reality and it alters it, and then I simply believe it, right? We live by this rule. If I think it, it must be true. Doesn't matter if it is true. If I think it, it must be true, right? And of course, AA doesn't work on either one of those two things. We're not doctors. We cannot fix the body. And again, like we kind of joked about a few weeks ago, we're not counselors, contrary to popular belief of some of us, but we are not counselors. So we're not here to fix your brain. And I think that's so weird. Because when I came into AA, I didn't know that. So what the heck are we here to do? We're to walk with each other to find a loving God who will fix our soul. See, the 3 parts of alcoholism, physical, mental, and spiritual. And we can't do anything about the physical and we can't do anything about the mental, but there are some things that we can do about the spiritual. And in this particular step, it's extraordinarily clear. It says when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Fix the broken heart, and you think differently. And when you think differently about life, and you find joy in life, and you find goodness in life, and beauty in life, you simply think differently. And when you think differently, you'll make different decisions, and when you make different decisions, you'll take different actions, and when you take different actions, your life takes off like a rocket ship. It's just true. And it doesn't take years to do. It takes weeks to do. Weeks. So for me, the best reason to do a 4-step is because I am fully infected with step 1. I have all 3 components of that disease, and they are deeply embedded in who I am. I truly believe in my heart that God can and will restore me to sanity if I follow the process that he's given me through Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have to live with a mental illness for the rest of my life. I mean, really, when you think about it, you think about the promises in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And what if it was this? Look, you won't drink, which was your solution to the insanity you lived in with, and you'll keep the insanity that you lived with. Welcome. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Right? That's not what I read from the book. And it's not my experience. And we heard Craig talk about some of the changes that God has done in his life through this process. And as we've heard for the last several weeks, and I'm telling you what, regardless of what you think of what I say tonight, if you don't come back and listen to Judith next week, she's a tremendous talk on the 4-step. She's one of the finest women that I know in or out of Alcoholics Anonymous. She's one of the finest members of Alcoholics Anonymous that I know. She is the real deal. And she's going to come back next week and tell us about her personal experience with the 4-step and the inventory process. We certainly welcome everybody back for that. But I got this thing. I really have it. And I also believe in step 2 that God can and will restore me to sanity if I follow this process that he's given me. And so at that point, I had a decision to make, and we call that the 3rd step. And so I said this prayer with my sponsor, Joe, and we got off our hands and knees, and he gave me a piece of paper and a pen. And he said, the first thing I want you to do is write down everyone that you're angry at. And I did that. Short list, 700-800 names. And I didn't even get to the not guilty ones. I just put the guilty ones down. And then institutions. And I'm like, what's an institution? And he's like, well, maybe the church you grew up in, maybe marriage is an institution. Oh, maybe the federal government, political part, could be anything, just institutions in general. I started thinking about them. I had a few of those that I was a little ticked off at, right? And then principles. What were the principles that I was mad at? Things like I got to go to work and earn the paycheck that I get, right? Principles like I'm supposed to treat you kindly and lovingly, whether you treat me kindly or lovingly. Didn't like that one at all, right? All my relationships, almost all of them were like this. I will act lovingly toward you as a test to see how you respond. And if you don't beat my level of kindness, I'm leaving. Pretty fair. I think that was fair, right? Laced in justice, right? Principles guide the way we live our lives. And my principles were so messed up, they were just, there's no other word for it but insanity. And so I got all those down. He said, now tell me why you're mad at him. And I went, well, this guy did this to me, and that guy did this to me, and she did this to me, and they do this to me, and this is how they treat everybody. Everybody, that's a lot of people, right? And on and on and on, and I wrote those down. So we got the first 2 columns done without him even telling me we were doing the first 2 columns. Because it didn't matter if I understood the book, what matters is that I did what the book said. So then he started talking about what part of self was affected. And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, every person, this is how he explained it to me, every person God has given instincts to. There's a social instinct, there's a security instinct, and there's a sexual instinct. And those are on our forms, the Joe and Charlie forms, right? They're not big book forms, they're not A approved or anything like that. It's just a couple of guys who put a big book study together, formulated this, and it's a process to go 4-step. It's not the perfect one, it's not the right one. If you haven't done it that way, it doesn't mean you did a wrong one. Don't hear any of that. This is how I did it. But they're fairly popular forms, and a lot of us have used them. And then under social instinct, there were 2 parts. One was self-esteem, and the other was personal relationships. Because we all have a desire to have a positive relationship with ourselves in some way. Like, I don't know what you think of you when you wake up, right? But back in my drinking days, I hope you think better of yourself than I thought of me when I woke up. Unless you don't deserve to, then I hope you feel exactly the way you do, because maybe that'll be a motivation like it was for me to do something different. But there's times I can just fabricate things, right? You just fabricate things. I'm not a big self-esteem guy. I don't really like that word so much. But I like self-respect, and I had none of it. And personal relationships. Did this person and what happened affect my personal relationships? All I was supposed to do is, if it applied, make a check mark and just go right down the page. And then there was security instincts. And he talked about there was 2 kinds of instincts that every human has, material and financial. Everyone has a desire to love and to be loved. Everyone has a desire to sort of live comfortably, whatever that means in our personal situations, right? I was supposed to go down that. And if that person, institution, or principle and what had happened and how I perceived that messed with that for me, I was supposed to check that box. And I did that. And then there was sexual instinct. And apparently, from what he told me, every human being has a sexual instinct and a desire to satiate it. And it fell under 2 categories here as well, hidden and not hidden. I was kind of hoping for a third. He didn't give me an option, right? So I said, what's the difference between hidden and not hidden? And he goes, look, you know, all right? You know, dude, don't even do that. But for the sake of just explaining to a new kid in the program, he basically said this to me, that hidden sexual instincts, things that affect your things that affect your instinct, your sexual instincts that you want to hide That's what you check. If you don't care if everybody in the world knows it, no shame that means, check that. And I did that. And we talked about our ambitions, and we can go into all that. But I got it all done. I got all the check marks done. And then we went to the fourth column. And there it's selfishness, dishonesty, basically fear, and inconsiderate behavior. And it was to go down that column and check anytime I had a part, anytime. If it was 1%, if I contributed 1% to the problem, I was to check the box. Because this was my inventory, not the other person's. And I did that. I had a lot of check marks, man. Holy smokes, I had a lot of check marks. And then we went on to fear, and we replicated that same process. And then we went on to the sexual side of things, and we replicated that process. And I came to the end of it, and I said, see, I wrote it down, I'm done. He said, no, not done. And then he brought me to the book. And he said, here's what we did. You see that in there? I said, oh my gosh, I did the book. I was like stunned. I did the book, right? He said, there's another part in here. And although we look at 3 specific areas on a 4th step, according to the big book, our resentments, our fears, and our sex conduct, there's really 3 actions that we take under each heading. And the first is to think about it. It says we analyze the past. We think about it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the best advice from the best people. It's don't think. I think that's bad. I don't mean morbidly reflect, and I don't mean contemplate on the same thing for over 6 days and don't go to work while you're doing it. That's not what I mean by think about, right? I mean, I got a challenge here with this relationship. What's my part? I'm never going to answer that if I don't think about that. If I just forget it, run away from it. Can't fix a problem, I'm dodging, right? So I'm supposed to think about it. The second part I did both of those. I thought about it and I wrote it down. It's the other part, write it down. And then the third part is there's prayers. Our book guides us and coaches us to pray on our resentment part, on our fear part, and on our sex part. And it's interesting on that resentment part, because I've been in meetings and look, you'll never talk me out of the advantages and the blessings that come from other people praying for people, especially people we resent. Like, I'm all for that. But it's interesting, in the direction part of that 164, it doesn't tell us to pray for other people. It points us back to pray for ourselves. It says, God save me from being angry. Doesn't even mention the other punk, right? Me. God save me from being angry, as if I'm the chief victim of my own resentments. I never looked at it like that before. And then it says, God, show me how I might be helpful to them. Whoa. You mean these people that I just wrote down? How I'm going to be helpful to them? Yes. Consistently throughout the book, the theme is prayer and service is our answer. Prayer, another way to say that might be selflessness. Right? Never says anything in there, although I'm not against it. It just doesn't say anything in there about forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Right? And that was interesting to me because I had heard, again, people that I respect a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous talk about this. I have to forgive myself. I have to let it go. I have to do. It doesn't say anything about that. It says we have a 9-step process to let God change our hearts, which alters the way we look at that situation so that we can be transformed. Looking at it differently is proof we've been transformed. Looking at it the same and denying it is what I did when I was drinking. So this idea of the 4th step, we're just digging a little bit. So again, resentment sort of always falls under anger, right? And grudge list and in these kinds of terms. And I think that's valid. I got to tell you, when I really dig into that word, it's interesting. My experience is that resentment is something that I chronically re-feel. I remember when I was in 4th grade, I wrote a really bad paper. And it was on the Civil War. And I didn't read the book on the Civil War. It was more of a The U.S. never loses wars. Like, I had no idea what the Civil War was in third grade. But I was like, remember, we're like, never lose the wars because we're really good. Like, it was total fabrication. The teacher knew it. She's like, rewrite this paper. Rewrite. Do it again. That's what the prefix re means. Do it again. Sentiment is the core of the word resentment. Sentiment is a feeling. To resent something is to chronically re-feel the offense, to chronically renegotiate the details of what happened in your head. And again, I'm sure your heads don't plagiarize the story after telling it over and over and over and over again to yourself, right? But mine did. Mine absolutely did. If you were 10% of whatever problem we had together, by the time I told myself that story 15 times, you were at least 68.3% wrong. Right? I mean, I would add on your motive without talking with you about it or discussing it with you, mind you. I would just add it in there. You know, and really what she did was, and this is what she was getting at. I remember back 14 years ago, she did that to one kid on the playground. So she must have, I mean, I would have all these spider webs attached to it. All this crazy stuff. And then I would think, you know, she's not the only one that's treated me like that. I remember back, I mean, I could create scenarios that maybe had a semblance of truth in them. But by the time my head got finished telling the story, it was just some convoluted mosaic. It didn't have any rhyme or reason to it. It couldn't have any sense about it at all. It was all fabrication in my head. Craig mentioned fears. And, you know, I got to tell you, fear has been a part of my life and can still be a part of my life today. It's rotten, man. It's the smell of a dying mortal soul. Like, it's brutal. And again, where does that play out? Up here. Always up here. I've never seen a fear over there. Never once have I seen a fear over there. I've only felt fears in here. Only. And they come as a result of me conversing with myself about the potential problems that may come to fruition if this happens, right? It's never reality. It's all stories I tell myself. All stories I tell myself. And I got to tell you, now I'm sober a little while, longer than some, shorter than others, doesn't matter. I got what I got. I got to tell you, I mean this. Almost none of the fears I've had in my entire life have ever really happened. Almost none. I'd be hard-pressed to count 10 things that I was really authentically afraid of that actually occurred. Just by statistical averages, I should never believe my own thinking on fear. Because I've been afraid of volumes of things, and almost none of them have ever happened. Here's the thing, though. This is why I know what we have is spiritual. This is why I know we're not here to like mentally do gymnastics and figure this out and use really cool cliches to like not think that anymore. Because even though I know that statistic, that volumes of fears have almost never come true for me, even though I know that that is a fact, I do not have the power within myself to not fear, even though I know it. It is beyond me to emotionally set myself straight on that stuff with willpower alone. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. Fear is brutal. Fear is brutal. You know, I'm fortunate. I got a staff that works for me, and in our sales department, we talk about the number one detriment to sales success. We always talk about it. Here's what it is. Here's what it is. If you went to anybody that works for me, they tell you this. Number one detriment to sales success, fear. Fear. Why didn't you make that sales call? Well, last time I was there, he didn't like me. Translation, the next time I go see him, he won't like me either, so I'm not even going to go. Right? Hey, why did you have like a 4-hour interval of not picking up the sales phone call, right? Not picking up the telephone to make a sales call? Well, you see, this territory, those sales, the customers, it's all. And when you drill it down and have just an eye-to-eye, man to man, man to woman, adult to adult conversation with them, the reality is their emotions plagued them and they wouldn't pick up the phone. Anybody in sales in here at all? Everybody, is that true? It's absolutely true. I already know I'm going to lose the sale before I walk in to see the customer, because how in the world could someone that talented ever buy from this? That may be a problem career-wise. I'm just suggesting that, right? You might be able to smell that when you walk in. But you know what's weird? I've talked to teachers with tons of consonants and vowels after their names, and you know what they say? I'm not really sure that I should be teaching this class. I'm not really sure that I'm qualified to teach this class. Right? I know doctors who are like, I can't believe the patients really take my advice. Like, I don't take my advice, right? I mean, I sponsor an attorney. He did not cheat through law school, but he feels he doesn't deserve his degree. Why? Well, not very smart. That part I agreed with. But the point is, we all have this noise. And the truth is, that's one of the reasons I drank, was the noise in my head. Because I don't know how alcohol affected you, but one of the beautiful parts for me that alcohol gave me, it was a volume switch. Right? Anybody watch, what's the heavy metal movie with Stonehenge and Spinal Tap, right? Anybody, We Are Spinal Tap, everybody know that movie? Okay. So the deal is, right, they turn it up to 11. They turn their speakers up to 11 because it's louder than 10. Right? It's the same thing, right? But what alcohol did for me is it took the 11 that I lived at, brought it down to about 3. Oh man, 3's a great place to live, right? Never did get to 0 quite yet, for too long. A little bit here and there, a little bit here and there. But man, 3, I'm telling you, alcohol moved my volume switch from 10 or 11 down to about a 3. And I got this every time I drank. Alcohol did for me what God should have been doing for me my whole life. But I wouldn't go to him. Now I have in 3. Step 3 says, I'm going there. Step 4 is the first action we take to complete the decision that we made in 3. That's all 4 is. 4 is saying, you know what? I have this problem. 3-fold disease, not drinking, 3-fold disease. I have a solution. That's God. He can restore me to some semblance of sanity in life. I believe he can. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It's about, do I believe that God has the power and the ability to restore me to sanity? It's a yes or no question. I believe he does. So the only natural response is, if I admit I'm insane and I have found a solution that can restore me to sanity, is to give my life to that. So I make that decision to give my life to that God. And the first thing I do is look at the things that block me. Resentments, fears, and sex conducts, because I can't let him take anything away that I won't even see. St. Francis has this wonderful analogy that I hope in these every other week little segments that we go through that it keeps coming up. St. Francis called us stained glass windows. Each one of us. We all have different colors. It's a different picture. It's a different mosaic. It's a different look for all of us. But we're all these beautiful stained glass windows. And the problem isn't anything other than 2 things, according to St. Francis. 1, our windows are filthy. Filthy. I get that. The second, the reason that we don't light up and do what a stained glass window is supposed to do, which is be beautiful and reflect color upon things, is because we think we're the generator of the light. Right? One of the things in step 3 is it says you have to quit playing God. Didn't work. You can easily see why. If we think we're the sun, stained glass window won't light up at all. It won't shine any color on anything. And it won't do it if it's dirty either. So we've come to the spot in step 2 to say, I'm not the sun, right? I can't generate the light. I can only be the conduit for the light. I can only let the light shine through me. I cannot be the light. Now I got to clean the window so it can do what its job is, right? Resentments, fears, and sex conduct. So I don't know about you, but the sex conduct part of the inventory always sort of like befuddled me a little bit, right? Because here I am, this kid who, walks in and, I have a drinking problem, but there's other things going on. Like apparently I have some sort of bladder control issue. Clearly, I must have some kind of, gravitational pull toward police officers. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know what's wrong with me. And now Joe says, you got to look at your sex conduct. And I went, didn't I come here to quit drinking? And he went, no. You came here to have a spiritual awakening so that God will keep you from drinking. And I was like, that's not really why I came. That's not at all why I came. Truthfully, it's not. I didn't know that was what we were talking about. He said, well, that is what we're talking about. All right. So I hooked my caboose up to his engine and he just pulled me. And we jumped into the sex conduct. And see, when I heard that and when I read the book, I thought they meant intercourse. Write down all the intercourse you've had. Write that down. And then write down all the other sexual things, write that down. What's interesting? Joe thought that was not complete. He thought that was part of it, but he thought that was incomplete because it doesn't say it's a sexual intercourse inventory. It says it's a sex conduct inventory. And I'm going, I'm trying really hard to follow you, but I don't get what you're saying. He said, what is sex? I'm like, Joe, if you don't know by now, he said, no, what is sex? He says it's a noun. It can be a verb, I guess, but it's really a noun. So it's about male and female. You know those job applications, Mike, that you fill out? And I said, yeah, and look at it, it's like, sex, right? What do you put there? How do you fill in the box, right? Some of you know where I'm going here, right? So, please write after the interview. Is that what you write in depending on your benefits package, perhaps? Like, what do you write in the box? I don't know if you had a list of all employees, could I have my pick? Like, what do you write in the box? You write gender in the box. And this was about my life as a man, which included sexual behaviors and actions, but it wasn't exclusive to those. I said, what? He said, and if there's guys here who understand this, I've heard 5th steps from men and women over the years, and we both share this, so I'm just a guy, so I'm talking at it from a guy perspective. But I've heard this same stuff from ladies. What does it mean to be a man? Like a real man, not the one you pretend to be at work or the one you pretend to be in the gym or the one you pretend to be on the basketball court or when you're talking about income levels or how many girls you've dated, but really. I got to tell you, I didn't have an answer for that question when asked. I had no idea. Most of my life, I pretended to be a man because I had no idea what the answer was. I'd reach in, here's a situation where the world needs a man. And I'd reach back into my man file and I'd pull it out from my head and I'd open it up and it was empty. The damn file was empty. Well, I don't want you to know I have an empty file. My God, what are you going to think of me if you find out I don't know? It's going to validate every fear I have. You want to talk about turning up that volume again on fear? Be honest about that. In the middle of a boardroom. Well, Mike, what's your opinion? Well, actually, here's what I think. Everything from that point on, BS, right? I mean, what does it mean? I've talked to ladies who suffer from the same thing. And this manifests itself all over the place in terms of sex conduct. It's why we do sexual things to validate. Not always, but sometimes it's one of the things we use. We can use all kinds of stuff. What kind of car do we drive? Right? I knew a guy in the program who was a mechanic who thought it was very masculine to be a mechanic, so he wouldn't wash his hands when he came to meetings so other people could see grease on his hands. And we can all giggle at that. But he's the actor trying to run the whole show. And his character is manly mechanic. What's ours? What's the pretending we do? That's what should be on there. Right? That's scary. That's scary when we don't know who we are and we've been pretending most of our lives and all of a sudden we're stuck with this question. So I wrote all that down as best I could. And it was my first one, so it was hugely incomplete. There's no way I could see that stuff at 3 months sober. But it doesn't mean don't do it. It doesn't mean don't do it. Joe is very clear with me, and that's something that I totally believe today. We can't, I heard a guy say one time, well, I'm not going to do my 4-step yet because I'm not honest. I'm going to wait until I'm honest and then do a 4-step. It's like, back the car up and drive down a one-way street. It's like you're going the wrong way. No, we get honest by doing a 4-step. We don't wait till we're honest to go do a 4-step, right? Because how do you wait to be honest? Right? So this was a big deal. And so I wrote all this stuff down as best I could, as incomplete as it was. It was as thorough as I could be then. I had limited wisdom, limited insight, less than I have now, which is saying something. Nothing, right? I'm going off pure what Joe was saying. We come to this question, what should you have done instead? Oh, God. I hated that question. See, I was taught by a guy a long time ago, there's only two reasons people ask questions, right? One is honest inquiry. I really want to know the answer to this. The second reason that people ask questions is to avoid what they already know, right? You ever be in a relationship with someone and you come in and your partner says, hey, why did you do this? And you immediately go, well, why did you do that last week? They don't want to address the question, want to divert the question to another question, right? And then she says, well, I don't know, why did you do it? Well, I don't know, why did you do it? Suddenly we're about why you did it and never get to the deal, right? Two reasons people ask questions. Honest inquiry, I really want to know the answer. Second reason, avoid what I already know. To stop avoiding what I already know. Write the answer down. So I did that as best I could. And I wrote down what I felt I should have done instead. Right? And I was confronted with a whole bunch of stuff. Like, instead of pretending that I knew the answers to these things in life, what if I just said to someone, I don't know the answer. Can you help me figure it out? I might have got an answer. Instead, I pretended, and then I had to lie and cover it up, and then I didn't want you knowing I lied about it, and then I didn't want you to know. Suddenly I'm in this web. I can't get out of it. As far as the sexual behaviors, that question was relevant too. What should I have done instead? I wrote these things down because I had some shame attached to them, some discord, some separation between who I desired myself to be and what those actions told me I was. Right? What should I have done instead? Here's one. Drop her off at the end of the date and go home. It was a radical thought, right? I mean, I didn't know that dates had like beginning, middle, and ends. I just thought they, kept going until you both pitched in and bought the U-Haul. And then just, that's, right? I had no idea. Almost everything I did in my life was wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it, wing it. Never admit I didn't know. That would be horrible. Wing it, wing it. And so from those answers and this is right out of the book, from the answer of the question, what should I have done instead, which is a question in the book right in the middle of page 69, it says this: from those answers, I'm supposed to formulate something. And the book calls it a sane and sound ideal for my future sex life. You know what's interesting? There's about a page and a half of our 164 on the sex ideal. Went to meetings for months, never heard anything about it. Oh, we had tons of meetings on one paragraph in chapter 6, right? Or on step 6. And we had tons of meetings on one paragraph in step 7, right? And we could go through the doctor's opinion 1,000 times, right? We might even genuflect at the acceptance altar on 417. Back in my day, it was 449, right? What is it, 5 paragraphs, 6 paragraphs, right? Page and a half on the sex ideal. Nobody talks about it, let alone just sex in general as a topic of the 4-step. Like, when was the last time you were in a meeting on the 4-step portion or discussion group on sex? Been a little while, I would think. Unless you go to different meetings, another group. Anyways, sorry, just kidding. Everybody's welcome. Oh, I've offended someone now. Great, yeah, that's great. But what's that? Yeah, right. So these 3 components are loaded with actions that can help me begin to change my life. The 4-step is not a panacea. It does not fix everything. I have to tell you, I've been in meetings and I've sponsored guys who have been in the program for a long time, and maybe they come to me after several years of sobriety and we start walking through the steps, right? And like, I've been sober a little while and things aren't going so great. I need to do the 4-step. Maybe that's true, right? But the 4-step, let's not forget, the 4-step is only a portion of completing the original 3rd, right? 4 through 9 is what brings about our awakening. 10 and 11 continue to hopefully develop and manage it and allow it to continue to grow. And if that spark hits you, you can't help but carry the message. You just got it. But if you've been around a little while and it ain't going so right, I'm not saying you shouldn't do another 4-step. That's not my business. But man, look at the ones after it. Because maybe that's what we're avoiding. Just maybe. Right? So I got all this down on paper, and I'm trying as best I can. And Joe brings up the prayers again. Now, again, I have 4 months of sobriety. Like, I think this is odd that this guy who's trying to help me stay sober is asking me to get on my knees and pray for 4 things with sex. Right? The right ideal, sanity, guidance in questionable situations, strength to do the right thing. I was like, wow. So then he said that, don't worry, God alone can judge your sex situation. Counsel with others is often desirable, right out of the book on page 70. So I said, well, that's good. Whew. Only God can judge it. He goes, that's the good news. The bad news is he will. That was just the humor. That was the humor of Joe. That was how he joked, right? Keith. But that was the humor of them, right? And so he said, here's what I want you to do. And I did this. After I got my new sex ideal written down, which has been evaluated and reevaluated and reevaluated and reevaluated multiple times. I didn't start out with the one I have today. He told me to do this, and I do this every time I rewrite one. He said, you get on your hands and knees and you let God judge it. And you just sit there till you think he's cool with what you wrote. Oh, man. I can't tell you how many loopholes I had written in there silently on the side, right? And when I say, God, this is what I think you want me to do with your body, because it's your body now. I gave it to you in 3. The loopholes. Oh, I got to sew that one up. Maybe I'll only sew it up 82%. I should, 18%. I should get at least 18%. I mean, couldn't work for me that way. Right? Our chip says, to thine own self be true. Right? And it's evolved over the years. My first ideal was, man, I'm ashamed to admit it, but it was still designed for me to be consensually selfish with someone else. some of the guys I sponsor, and we talk about this stuff, right? So we're having a conversation one day, and I just asked them, I said, hey, can you give me a time when consensual selfishness outside of the bedroom is acceptable in any scenario? Like, is it consensually selfish okay if we're stealing something? Well, no, that would be selfish. Okay. Would consensual selfishness be okay in, I don't know, fill in the blank? Well, no, that would be selfish. Well, I'm not here to tell anybody what their ideals should be. But man, if we don't challenge each other sometimes, especially the people that we love, the men that I sponsor, if I challenge them with passivity and silence, what's their sobriety going to be like? It's not a challenge. Besides, I'm not giving them the answer. I just want them to think about it. If their conscience is clean, that's up to them and God. That isn't my place to do that. But if I don't ask challenging questions, I'm not sure I'm pointing them anywhere. The only time I've ever heard us justify consensual selfishness is in the well, we're adults and we should be able to do what we want. I'm not. That's cool. If you're cool with that, you're cool with that. Just saying. If I can't use you for money and I can't use you for your car and I can't use you for a job thing, all that is sort of selfish. I'm just using you for it. Even if you're letting me use you for it, we would all go, that you can't do that. And then over here, this 1/10 of 1% deal, we're like, hey, that's fine. Right? I got to tell you, it took me a long time to get to a spot in my life, not the first one. I want to be clear about that. But after inventory and prayer and inventory and prayer, anytime I'm selfish, whether you let me be selfish or not, if I'm selfish, and I got to own that side of the street. I didn't know that when I came in. I really did. So we think about this stuff, we write it down, and we pray about it. And that 4-step prayer and resentment, we're praying for ourselves. God, save me from being angry. Show me how I might be helpful to that person. There's another line in there, and I think Craig even alluded to it. It says, the people offended, it says, we're perhaps spiritually sick. And I'd read that and be like, yeah, they're probably sick. But it doesn't say probably. It says perhaps. And that's an interesting way to phrase that. The people that angered me were perhaps spiritually sick. Doesn't mean they were. Because I got to tell you, when I came to AA, the people that were not spiritually sick offended me greatly. They ticked me off because they challenged me with stuff. They were the ones that got me mad. The people that I was sick like, we were going to coffee, hanging out, chain smoking. It was great, you know? It was the people that had grown past the description of Alcoholics Anonymous as a place to come and hang out and laugh and have coffee only. That's great, and we do that. We did it tonight. We'll do it again next week. Right? We're hopeful. We're hopeful that this meeting complements what's already the vitality that's already going on in the recovery community in Sioux Falls. We hope this complements it. We hope it brings more of it, right? We want to be welcoming to people, and we want to be loving to people, but we want to bring a message of recovery to people too. And sometimes that might feel like a fine line, but if we stick to the literature, if we keep carrying the same or similar message, that what we're here for is a spiritual awakening so that God can relieve our alcoholism, hold it, can arrest it for us, which are the promises of that 10th step. The promises of the 10th step say, I've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. I didn't even sworn off. It's the miracle of it. I didn't do anything and I got it anyway. To me, that's grace. When I get a gift that I don't deserve and I didn't work for, I don't know what other definition of grace there is. The only thing I think this book and this program is asking us to do is just walk as best we can, as terribly as we do, as I do, this thing. Walk as best we can, closer and closer and closer to the principles laid out. And it's amazing what happens. And again, we've named this group and this meeting the treasure map meeting because, look, the big book is not the answer. As if I memorize it and I know all the things and I can tell you what Ebby's middle name was. Throckmorton, by the way. None of that's going to, I kid you not. I kid you not. That's not going to keep anybody sober. Right? Knowing all kinds of history and who Circe was and, blah, blah, blah. And did you know that so-and-so did this? Like all that's, I love history. I love the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's great. But that's not going to help me. Right? What's going to help me is using the book as a map to find the treasure. And that treasure is God. And this map leads to it. And that's why we come here every week. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. God bless you all. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer. One quick announcement before we all scoot out. If you would like to be a home group member, there's 2 ways you can do that. Back by Randy, we have a list of people who want to be in the home group. You can also go to the webpage and sign up there as well, right? And then next week, again, I just want to put a pitch in for Judith from Bismarck, North Dakota, because she's fantastic, and she'll lay the 4-step out as it applies directly to her life in a beautiful, beautiful manner. So thank you for being here tonight. God bless you all. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep back, it works if you work it. No, thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, brother.
I love that